The night I learned the truth about my husband did not begin with shouting or broken glass. It began quietly, like most important moments in life do. Just an ordinary evening that looked no different from the thousands that came before it. But by the time the sun rose the next morning, the life I thought I understood had changed forever. My name is Eleanor. I'm 79 years old now, and when you live this long, you learn that the biggest turns in your life rarely announce themselves. They arrive softly, sometimes disguised as something small, something almost forgettable. That night happened 42 years ago. Back then, I was 37, married for nearly 15 years to a man named Harold. We lived in a small brick house on the south side of Chicago. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm and full of the kind of life two hard-working people build together. We had 2 children, a son who loved baseball, and a daughter who hummed while she did her homework. Harold worked long hours at the rail yard, and I worked mornings at a local elementary school cafeteria. From the outside, we were the kind of family people pointed to and said, "They're doing all right." And for a long time, I believed that too. Harold was a quiet man, not cold, just reserved. The kind of man who showed love through steady things, fixing a broken step, making sure the car had gas, bringing home a bag of oranges because he knew I liked them in winter. He didn't talk much about his feelings, but in those days a lot of men didn't. I didn't question it. We were raised to believe that love was proven through responsibility, not long conversations. Looking back, I can see little moments that should have made me curious. Not suspicious, just curious. Times when Harold seemed distant in a way I couldn't quite explain. Nights when he sat at the kitchen table long after everyone else had gone to bed, staring into a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. But life is busy when you're raising children. You notice things, and then you move on. Until the night you can't. It was a Tuesday evening in early October. I remember because the air had that first sharp chill that creeps in after summer finally lets go. The children were asleep upstairs. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. Harold had come home late from work, later than usual. When he walked in, he looked tired, but something else too. Distracted, maybe. He kissed my cheek, set his coat over the chair, and went straight to the bathroom to shower. I was clearing dishes when I noticed something fall from his coat pocket onto the floor, a small envelope. At first, I thought it might be a bill or a note from work. I picked it up without thinking much about it. His name was written on the front in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a folded letter. Now I want to tell you something honestly. I didn't open it right away. I stood there for a moment, holding that envelope, feeling a strange weight in my chest I couldn't explain. Part of me thought I should leave it alone, but another part of me knew something was already different, so I opened it. The letter wasn't long. Just a few paragraphs written in careful handwriting. And in those few paragraphs, my understanding of my life shifted in a way I never expected. The letter was from a woman. Her name was Lydia. She wrote about Harold visiting her the week before. She wrote about how their daughter had asked why her father couldn't come to her school play. She wrote about how she was tired of explaining his absence to a child who deserved answers. And then there was one line I will never forget. "She's starting to look just like you." For a long moment, the kitchen felt very quiet. Not angry quiet, not yet. Just still. Because the mind does a strange thing when it meets a truth it isn't prepared for. It tries to rearrange the words into something less painful, something that fits the life you thought you had. But no matter how I turned that letter in my hands, the meaning didn't change. Harold had another family, a daughter, and somehow 15 years of marriage had passed without me knowing. I heard the shower turn off upstairs. The pipes rattled in the walls the way they always did. For a moment I thought about putting the letter back in the envelope and pretending I had never seen it. But life doesn't work that way. When Harold came down the stairs, his hair still damp, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the letter in front of me. He saw it immediately. I watched his face change in a way I had never seen before. Not guilt exactly, not surprise either. It was something heavier than that. Recognition. He sat down across from me without speaking. For a long time, neither of us said anything. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it ever had before. Finally, I asked the only question my heart could find. How long? Harold rubbed his hands together slowly, staring down at the table. Since before we got married, he said. That answer felt like the floor disappearing beneath my feet. Before we got married, which meant that the life I thought had begun with honesty had started with a secret already in place. He told me the story in pieces that night, not with excuses, but with the kind of tired honesty a person shows when they know hiding is no longer possible. He had been young, 19. Lydia had been someone he cared for, but their lives had moved in different directions before he even knew she was pregnant. When she told him about the baby, he had already started seeing me. He said he didn't know how to explain it, didn't know how to walk into our new marriage carrying that truth without losing everything before it even began. So he did what many people do when they are afraid. He buried it. But buried things have a way of growing roots. For years he had been quietly helping them, visiting sometimes, sending money when he could, always telling himself he would explain it to me someday when the time was right. But someday turned into 15 years. By the time he finished speaking, the sky outside the kitchen window was turning pale with morning light. I wish I could tell you I handled that moment with perfect wisdom. I didn't. I felt angry, betrayed, humiliated in a way that sits deep inside your chest, the kind of hurt that makes you question every memory you once believed was solid. For weeks, we barely spoke except about the children. The house felt colder even when the heat was on, but something else slowly began to grow inside me during that time. Curiosity, not about the betrayal, but about the little girl mentioned in that letter. The child who had done nothing wrong in this story. One afternoon, about a month later, I asked Harold a question he didn't expect. How old is she? He looked at me carefully before answering. 14. That meant she was only 1 year younger than our son. I sat with that thought for a long time. A girl growing up just across the city, sharing the same father as my children, living a life that had been kept completely separate from ours. And suddenly the situation didn't feel as simple as betrayal anymore. It felt like a broken family that had been divided by fear. The first time I met her was awkward and quiet. She stood behind her mother's chair, studying me with the cautious eyes of someone who had heard stories, but didn't know which ones were true. Her name was Danielle, and the moment she smiled, I saw Harold's face in a younger, softer form. That day didn't fix everything. Forgiveness is not a door you walk through once, and suddenly everything feels peaceful. It's more like a long road you choose to keep walking, even when your feet hurt. But that meeting was the first step. Over time, our lives slowly adjusted. The children learned about their sister. Holidays became larger and a little more complicated, but also strangely fuller. The secret that had once threatened to destroy our family eventually became something we learned to live with honestly. Harold and I stayed married for another 30 years until the day he passed away. Our marriage was never the same as before that night, but it became something deeper in its own way. Less perfect, more real. Now, at 79, when I look back on that moment in my kitchen with the letter in my hands, I understand something I couldn't see back then. Life rarely gives us clean stories with clear heroes and villains. Most of the time, it gives us flawed people trying to do the best they can while carrying mistakes they're afraid to face. If you're listening to my voice today, maybe there is someone in your life who has hurt you. Maybe there's a truth you discovered that changed how you see everything. What I learned, slowly and sometimes painfully, is that forgiveness is not about pretending the hurt never happened. It's about deciding that the future deserves more space in your heart than the past. And sometimes the hardest secrets we uncover become the very things that teach us how strong love can be when it survives the truth.